They sat in an uncomfortable silence for a few minutes, both not sure what to say, then they both spoke the other's name simultaneously. "You go first," Ted offered generously. "Ted, you're a man, and I'm finding myself feeling like a real woman, especially after this morning," she started to explain. Ted raised an eyebrow and looked puzzled. "This morning? I woke up feeling different. Jenna says that whatever was in the polymer has begun changing my internal organs into a woman's. The process has accelerated, and it's having its effects on my brain." Ted nodded his understanding, and she continued. "To put it in a nutshell, I've started to react like a normal woman to stimuli from the male half of the population. It was really apparent to me this morning when the policeman talked to me. I found myself attracted to him in ways I had never envisioned. When you kissed me at the door to cover the paper exchange, my knees felt weak and my insides did a hiccup. Men are starting to look good to me in a way I never expected." Beth paused to better gauge Ted's reactions. "You were attracted to the policeman?" At her slight nod, he asked the question he dearly needed an answer to. "Were you attracted to me when we kissed?" he whispered hopefully. "Yes, I was, even more so." Beth stopped, wondering what he'd make of that. Ted's heart jumped in his chest. "Yes." It cried. "There is hope for me yet." Ted wanted to jump up and dance around the room in joy. He turned to Beth and said, "I'm attracted to you too, not the Beth I used to know, but the Beth that was my best friend for so many years." He leaned in and hugged her, giving her a gentle kiss on the lips. "But Ted," she interrupted, backing away slightly. "I need time, this is too new for me to accept all at once." "No problem, I don't want to force you into anything you're not sure of handling," Ted reassured her. "Ted, I did enjoy being near you, and I want to see where this may lead, but it has to be at my pace. Will you be satisfied to let me take the time I need? I need to know that you won't take advantage of my inexperience in these matters." "Beth, I'll wait as long as it takes," promised Ted. "Well, I hope it doesn't take that long," laughed Beth, giving him another hug. Ted grinned. "Me too," he added, fervently. Changing the subject as his eyes fell on the bag Beth had brought in from the car, he asked her what was inside. "Oh, nothing you'd be interested in," she smiled. "Girls' stuff." Well sorry, but now you do have me interested. Let's have a look now." "Ted," came Beth's exasperated answer. Sighing, knowing she'd get no peace till she showed him, she handed him the bag and sat back to watch him discover the lingerie. "Whoa! For me?" Ted smirked, holding up the bra gingerly. "Oh sure, I hope it fits you, I had to guess your size," she quipped, watching Ted's face flush before starting to giggle. "Funny," Ted retorted, throwing the bra at Beth as if it was contagious. "Hey, that's no way to treat your new bra." Beth was really enjoying herself now. Ted grabbed the giggling Beth and silenced her with the only thing he had handy, his mouth. Beth stopped wriggling, letting herself melt in his grasp as she returned the kiss. Slowly she pulled away, looking at Ted with a searching gaze, which seemed to pierce deep into his soul. As Ted went to kiss her again, she put a hand up against his chest. "Please, that was nice, but we're going too fast. Can I see you tomorrow? For dinner perhaps, or lunch?" Ted nodded and stood, lifting her to her feet. "I enjoyed tonight as well. I'll give you a call in the morning and arrange things then, okay?" Ted left after a quick goodnight kiss, and Beth was left alone with her thoughts still on the kiss Ted had given her earlier. Beth went and ran a bath, relaxing in the scented water. Later, when she lay in bed, thoughts of Ted filled her mind as she tried to picture the two of them spending more time together. Morning came on time the next day when she woke up. A quick cereal breakfast, followed by a brisk jog to the nearest shop to get a paper, saw her home again in 30 minutes. She really felt alive for some reason, and was enjoying every minute of it. She went and checked out her wardrobe, something she'd been meaning to do but always got distracted. She marveled at how many dresses she now had that felt so wonderful to her curious fingers. She was still in there sorting when the phone rang. Expecting it to be Ted, she was surprised to hear Jenna's voice on the line. "What's up?" Beth asked, sensing somehow that this was important. I need you to go to the old plant right now. I've rung Ted, and he said he'll pick you up on the way. Dress casual, jeans are okay as you'll be wearing a biohazard suit, Jenna partly explained. Oh, okay. Is there a problem? Beth asked worriedly. I'll explain later, Jenna then hung up, leaving a mystified Beth holding a dead phone. She went and took off the skirt she was wearing and pulled on a pair of soft denim jeans. They felt strange to her new legs and not at all like they used to do when she was Colin. They were rather snug-fitting, and she had to suck in a little to get them fastened. It felt strange not having to adjust herself, considering the tightness of the material against her hips. The smooth front seemed to strike her as odd, as this was the first time she had worn pants as Beth. Looking at the way her pants fitted her hips, she realized it was a neat arrangement. No awkward bits sticking out to get in the way. She recalled the pain of an incident where Colin had accidentally hurt himself when sitting down too quickly. No need to worry about that ever again, she thought. Everything was neat and in place. Wearing pants felt great, and there was no need for constant adjustments, especially when arousal meant nothing stuck out to cause discomfort. Beth grinned as she recalled Ted's bathroom excuse at Jenna's. Turning back to getting dressed, she added some white socks and a pair of runners and she was ready. When Ted arrived to pick her up, he told her he knew no more than she did, but hazarded a guess that it was something to do with the polymers that had changed her. When they arrived at the cordoned-off site, Jenna greeted them with a white biohazard suit to wear. Once donned, they passed the man standing guard after Jenna showed him her authority to enter the place, ordering him not to allow anyone in. That included the FBI until it was cleared of any possible hazards. Limited power and lighting had been restored to the underground levels, but the elevators were still not functioning. They used the now cleared stairs to go back down to level 2. Once they had descended into the stairs, Jenna took off her headgear and indicated to them to do the same. This was just a ploy to get in here and keep others out till we're finished, she grinned. I went to the supervisor and convinced him that there might be a biohazard still here. I offered to investigate and clear things before rumors got out and might delay repairs. I volunteered your names as assistants, seeing your knowledge on the plant would be essential. What's this all about? Why have you asked us here if there isn't a threat? Questioned Ted. Remember you explaining why Maggie can squeeze herself under doors and yet return to her normal shape with no harm, and why Colin had similar abilities but without the major return to her Colin shape. Jenna spoke, reminding them again. Yes, Maggie wasn't in contact with the polymer from that one, so? Ted replied slowly, trying to see where this was all leading. Jenna pulled out a notebook and started drawing. I was thinking about the possibilities of duplicating what happened to Colin. Using the mix of polymer to help my brother, she said excitedly. Shelley? You want Shelley to look like me, like Beth? Isn't one enough? Retorted a shocked Beth. No, you don't understand. Look at this and tell me what you see, Jenna suggested. The polymers from vat 2 and 3 joined together and flowed down the corridor, or what was left of it. Maggie was in the path and ended up as she is. The contents from vat 1 met the other stream at the junction of the other corridor on the left. It contacted the piece of Beth's body that ended up as the blueprint for Colin's current form as it flowed down the corridor where Colin was unconscious by the vent, transforming him into Beth, Jenna explained. So? Ted agreed, still not seeing the significance. So, the two streams meet here by the kitchen then flowed down the corridor to where Ted found the piece of the original Beth. That was about here, near the meeting room, which is approximately 20 feet apart. What if there is still a sample of the polymer left, somewhere between those 2 points? Oh, I see what you mean, Beth stated excitedly. What? I don't follow, Ted grumbled. Beth and Jenna shared a look between them that spoke volumes before Beth explained. Between those 2 points, the polymer has the property to absorb a DNA sample and transfer it to another person. Ah. Ted said finally, seeing the light. You want to find a sample free of Beth's DNA pattern and introduce one that will give Shelley the body she wants. A true female body and replace the one achieved through surgery and hormones. Yes. The 2 women chorused. Well, what are you two standing around for? Let's get looking. Ted grinned, getting a sour look from the girls. They looked at each other with an expression that said men, then winked at each other before following Ted in their search. Beth smiled to herself as she considered herself on the other side and could see the fun in putting down Ted and including him into the class as men. They made their way carefully through the remaining debris. They managed to follow the path the polymers had taken on what remained of the corridor walls, most of which were reduced to waist height. The first find was made at the junction near the kitchen, where the stream from vat 1 had met the mix from vats 2 and 3. Ted had discovered a tray of cups on the floor that had been covered by a fallen ceiling tile. Several of the cups were still upright and were filled with a thick gray liquid. Jenna was ecstatic with the find and carefully transferred the contents to a sterile sample bottle she had brought with her. A pity more of it wasn't found, Beth commiserated. It makes a great hair remover, she went on. The hair on my body still hasn't regrown. Let's check every inch of the floor, Jenna agreed. Beth was carefully removing debris from the floor when she spotted a broken pipe jutting out of the floor. It was a 2-inch yellow PVC pipe that led somewhere down to the lower level. The break was only a few inches above floor level and would have been covered by the polymer on its way past. Beth's call brought the others scrambling over to look at her find. The pipe appeared empty, which meant the other end was open and had drained away any fluid in it, or that there was a container connected to it large enough to hold whatever had poured into the pipe. Beth was trying to recall what the pipe was used for, as the bright yellow color was distinctive. She was sure it was a vent pipe from the vat system and was used to test the pressure release safety valves that had been originally installed. It was supposed to run into a catchment container, which would accept a portion of the overflow from the vats until the pressure normalized. She wasn't sure if it was still intact, as the newer system of electronic control of the excess pressures had replaced it some years before. Jenna stayed by the pipe, banging on it with a piece of metal bar, while Ted and Beth went below to search out the pipe, hopefully locating it in the near darkness by the tapping noise from above. Jenna was hoping something would be found, as she tapped away. A yell, some minutes later, had her running down to meet the others to see what they had found. Jenna, we found it! The pipe still runs into a container. Now all we need to do is see if there's anything in it. Beth shouted happily. The container was fairly big and there seemed to be a pump leading from the bottom. It led to a waste dump pipe that ran to the surface for disposal by tanker. Not wanting to be seen pumping stuff out of the building, Ted left to get some clean drums that they could manage on their own. Beth and Jenna managed to uncouple the fittings that led up out of the building so they could pump directly into the drums. Finding that the power was off, Beth went and found the breakers that had been shut off after the explosion. Turning them back on, they waited for Ted's return. A rumbling noise heralded Ted's return. 3 plastic drums preceded his arrival as they tumbled down the stairs. Ted had got them from a storage area on the ground floor. He reported that, apart from the posted guard, there was nobody around. This was good news, as they wouldn't want to attract attention when they brought the drums upstairs. They got to work and started the pump. It groaned at first and then tripped the breakers as the long-unused pump tried to spin. Resetting the breakers, they held their breath as they tried again. The pump groaned, then went silent, apart from a low whereas it started to spin. Fluid started to gurgle out into the drum, and they watched the level rise through the translucent sides of the drum. As the seconds ticked past and the levels rose, Jenna started to dance a jig and went and hugged the other two. The drum was nearly full before the pump started squealing in protest, as it ran dry and the fluid dribbled to a halt. Well, that's more than I'd hoped for, Jenna said, shutting the pump off. What will we do with it now? We can't just put it in the car and drive off, Beth asked. Not with a guard there. Jenna got out some labels from a pocket in her biohazard suit. Slapping them on the now sealed drum, they announced the contents as hazardous. We take the drum and store it in the dangerous goods room, next to the loading dock on the surface level. Ted, you can get the company van that we use for transporting our supplies, and load the drum and take it out to my lab. Just remember to peel off the labels and put on these ones, Jenna explained, handing Ted some labels with experimental test sample printed on them. Jenna, whose DNA are you going to use for Shelley's template? Beth asked inquisitively. Mine, was the terse reply. Do you think that's wise? Ted questioned as he started to manhandle the drum to the stairs. Well, Shelley is family, and even as my brother, he had similar features as myself. Now, as Shelley, she looks even closer to me in appearance. I figured as a copy of me, all she needs to do is dye her hair and wear it differently, to seem similar, but not identical. Yeah, women have more choices when it comes to how they want to appear, Beth agreed, having already found that out. What about the hair removal properties, how will you work that? Beth asked, as Ted went to find a hand truck to lift the drum up the stairs. Well, if I seed the polymer with a blood sample from myself, I could rub the liquid over my skin with no effects, as the DNA will be the same as mine. The same will apply to Shelley, as she will soon be me, DNA-wise anyway. Will Shelley go along with this? To actually become you? Beth questioned, cautiously. Sure she will, she often confessed to wishing she was me. Now she will really get that chance. Jenna started to get emotional, and tears threatened to flow. I can see this will be one of those moments that will mark the turning point in your lives as sisters, prompted Beth, giving Jenna a hug. They started up the stairs to see Ted coming down with a hand truck. Declining their offers of help, he told them to go home and he'd sort the drum removal. Ted did say he'd call Beth for her lunch date. This brought a big smile to Jenna's face as she overheard Ted's offer. Dating already? Jenna giggled, looking at Beth as they trudged up the stairs. It's just lunch, and maybe dinner, blushed Beth, trying to act nonchalant. Sure it is, pressed Jenna, nudging Beth in the ribs with a friendly elbow. Oh darn, I forgot I came with Ted, I'll have to wait till he's finished, Beth grumbled, more to herself than anybody. Nonsense, you can ride with me, Jenna laughed. Where do you want to go? She asked pleasantly. Well, I'm not exactly dressed to go anywhere, but home, sighed Beth. Jenna looked at Beth as they started walking to her car. Honey, you look fine to me, unless you're thinking of going into the Ritz for lunch. Then you'd need to wriggle that butt, she added with a wink. Beth laughed, feeling a wonderful sense of the bond between her and Jenna. It was a strange thing, Colin had felt a similar bond between himself and Ted, although not nearly as strong. Beth supposed that was because men, even close friends as Colin and Ted had been, never really allowed their emotions to flow free. Sadly, it wasn't that men were incapable of it, more of what society said was proper behavior. Women, on the other hand, were allowed to show their emotions and were not stilted by those same rules that governed men's acceptable behavior. Jenna stopped by the guard and said that Ted would be storing a drum of suspected biohazard in with the dangerous goods until he could get the van and remove it to the lab for analysis. Beth and Jenna departed then, diving into town, where they spent several hours shopping. Beth was getting more comfortable being amid the fripperies and silken garments that filled the aisles of the local Victoria's Secret store. Jenna was making sure Beth wasn't shy about touching the intimate underthings and urged her to at least try some of them on. Beth, although dressed fairly casually in her opinion, was still conscious of the many looks she was getting from the men she passed. She asked Jenna if this was a normal occurrence. Honey, with your figure, you could be wearing a sack and still turn heads, she laughed. That's one of the things that comes with the territory, if you're stacked. You can do two things: either embrace it and use it to your advantage, or deny it and always be in fear of attracting the wrong kind of attention. It is kind of uplifting, seeing men make such fools of themselves over me, Beth giggled, striking a playful pose. She thrust her hip out and stuck her chest forward, while putting one hand behind her head touching her hair and the other was planted firmly on her outstretched hip. Hey! Stop that, you hussy. You're learning woman way too fast, Jenna admonished, with a pout. Those poor harmless men don't deserve such torture, she added, before dissolving into laughter and grabbing Beth in a hug. Beth wondered what others in the shop must think of two women laughing and hugging each other, but apart from the occasional glance and smiles, no one seemed bothered much. Women must be more tolerant of the open displays of affection they had displayed, she thought to herself. A cell phone buzzed in Beth's purse, alerting them to Ted having completed the task of transferring the drum to Jenna's lab. They agreed to meet at a local park to discuss the next steps. As it was approaching lunchtime, Ted said he'd spring for lunch. Ted arrived just after the girls had found an unoccupied bench with seats. He had 3 large paper bags proudly proclaiming they were from Donna's Diner, a local and widely popular eating establishment. Looking in the bags, the girls saw a huge fresh crispy bread roll, filled with generous amounts of chicken and ham along with lettuce, tomato, and mayo. Styrofoam cups filled with hot coffee completed the fare. Beth thought she could manage to eat all her roll but found her stomach filled up a lot quicker in this body. Reluctant to waste the fine food, she wrapped what remained up for later. Jenna did the same, thanking Ted for the meal. Sipping their coffees, conversation turned serious on how best to proceed. Plans for Shelley were reasonably straightforward, and they planned to do it as soon as possible. The debate on whether to tell anyone about the properties of the polymer raged back and forth. It finally boiled down to this: if it was revealed about the DNA conversion properties of the polymer, not only would the government get involved to try and prevent wholesale identity swapping, but the FBI might figure out that Beth might not be who they thought she was, which could open the spy can of worms again. More research needed to be done on the polymer. Would it change a person into a child if a child's DNA was used, or would it just change a person into what the child would have looked like at the age of the person receiving the child's DNA? As Jenna and Shelley were fraternal twins, this wouldn't be a problem. But if a sample came from a deceased person, and the subject reverted to an aged person, the repercussions could be horrendous. One thing Jenna mentioned was the possibility of whether a person could be changed twice if a different DNA was tried after the first one. Why? In case someone didn't like the change and wanted something new, an irritated Ted asked. Well, that or reverting back to their original body, Jenna answered, looking pointedly at Beth. Oh, of course, sorry, I'm being insensitive. It just burned me to think someone would turn down the chance of a lifetime and reject a body they had selected, Ted clarified. Beth touched his arm to show she hadn't taken offense. She thought about the possibilities of gaining her old body back and the problems it would cause. Ted, even if it was possible, I don't think I'd go back to being Colin. I like this body and the way it makes me feel. There, I've said it, Beth thought to herself, feeling a sense of relief from her admission. They agreed for now that until further tests were done, only Shelley's DNA replacement and the depilatory effect would be tested on Jenna and then her sister after the conversion. Deciding to leave, Jenna excused herself, saying she had to get back to Kathy before the babysitter charged double time. She suggested, with a sneaky wink, that Beth loved shopping, and maybe Ted could accompany her.